In this chapter, the character of Maharaja Āgnīdhra, the elder son of Mahārāja Priyavrata, is described. When Mahārāja Priyavrata went off for spiritual realization, his son Āgnīdhra, in accordance with Mahārāja Priyavrata's instructions, became the ruler of Jambūdvīpa and maintained its residence with the same affection a father feels for his sons. Once, Mahārāja Āgnīdhra decided to have a son, and therefore he entered a cave of Mandara mountain to practice austerity. Understanding his desire, Lord Brahma sent a celestial girl named Purvachiti to Āgnīdhra's hermitage. After dressing herself very attractively, she presented herself before him with various feminine movements, and Āgnīdhra was naturally attracted to her. Girl's actions, expressions, smile, sweet words and moving eyes were fascinating to him. Āgnīdhra was expert in flattery. Thus he attracted the celestial girl, who was pleased to accept him as her husband because of his mellifluous words. She enjoyed royal happiness with Āgnīdhra for many years before returning to her abode in the heavenly planets. In her womb, Āgnīdhra begot 9 sons: Nabhi, Kimpurusha, Harivarsha, Ilavrita, Ramyaka, Hiranmaya, Kuru, Bhadrasha, and Ketumala. He gave them 9 islands with names corresponding to theirs. Āgnīdhra, however, his sense unsatisfied, was always thinking of his celestial wife, and therefore in his next life he was born in her celestial planet. After the death of Āgnīdhra, his 9 sons married 9 daughters of Meru, named Merudevi, Pratirupa, Ugradamštri, Plata, Ramya, Shyama, Nari, Bhadra, and Devaviti. So, text number 1, that was the summary of the entire chapter that will tell about Āgnīdhra Maharaj and how this Purana story was incorporated into Bhagavatam. We will study this.
Śrī Śukadeva Uvacha Evam pitari sampravritte tat anushtisani vartamana Āgnīdhra Jambūdvīpa ukasa praja aura savat dharma vyeksha manat varyagopayat.
Here the Sanskrit text is given in prose. Let us read the translation. Śrī Śukadeva Gosvāmī continued. After his father, Mahārāja Priyavrata, departed to follow the path of spiritual life by undergoing austerities, King Āgnīdhra completely obeyed his order. Strictly observing the principles of religion, he gave full protection to the inhabitants of Jambūdvīpa as if they were his own begotten sons. As if they were his own begotten sons. Purport of Srila Prabhupada. Following the instruction of his father, Mahārāja Priyavrata, Mahārāja Āgnīdhra ruled the inhabitants of Jambūdvīpa according to religious principles. These principles are exactly contrary to the modern principles of faithlessness. As clearly stated here, the king, Āgnīdhra, protected the citizens the way a father protects his begotten children. How he ruled the citizens is also described here, dharma vyeksha mana, strictly according to religious principles. Indeed, we can hardly see any governors today who rule according to the rules of religion. Therefore, everything our governors do across the world collapses right before our own eyes, there is instability or lack of confidence in our civilization, economic turmoils, anxieties, health is breaking down across the whole world actually. And Prabhupada traced this tendency back in those years. He could see that the Western world is doomed. Nuclear weapon was already there. And people developed taste to violation of regulating principles. They've adopted it as their culture. So the world was collapsing. But Prabhupada was inspired by science. And people were inspired by science as well. They were inspired by the fact that we have science, materialistic science, research institutes, education system, and this inspired their hope for a better future, especially education system inspired that hope. And Prabhupada came to smash up this science, which was so misleading. We need to understand the tactics of Prabhupada, his strategy, which highlights the need for brahmanas, who are full of true knowledge, who know the science. We need to explain to people what a science is, what ignorance is. So many misconceptions, delusions out there. So Prabhupada could expose false ideas beheld by scientists. Prabhupada would talk about Darwin and would also stress out that life didn't come from matter, life is eternal. And we need to continue these efforts. We shouldn't forget these efforts, it's very important. Here, Mahārāja Āgnīdhra pushes forward his father's mission, Priyavrata's mission. Priyavrata submerged into trance, he ascended to an exalted platform, while Mahārāja Āgnīdhra was supposed to take care of his dependents, as if they were their sons. He had to take care of their consciousness, happiness, their knowledge. And this is the purpose of laws of religion. And we, of course, we go forward, we advance in Krishna consciousness, but we should remember that we need to keep smashing materialistic science, materialistic ideas of people. We talk about Krishna in order to inspire one another, to approach to God, but we need to talk to people, ordinary people, and explain that the life is eternal. We need to distinguish between matter and spirit in order for people to feel that faith, that a soul exists. This is the major platform to discuss Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Today we witness a very weird tendency that people join our movement. They start reading Krishna stories, Bhagavatam, while they cannot distinguish between matter and spirit. They have kind of obscurity in their mind. They might think about their rasa, spirituality, happiness, love towards God straight away, but they haven't come to understand the fundamentals. We need to make sure we have sufficient preaching of this kind, scientific preaching in Krishna consciousness. And the head of our state should take care of it, should disseminate the laws of religion. It is the duty of the executive head of a state to see that the citizens strictly follow religious principles. The Vedic religious principles begin with Varnashram and Dharma, the duties of the 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas. Dharma refers to principles given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first principle of Dharma or religion is to observe the duties of the 4 orders as enjoined by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to people's qualities and activities, society should be divided into Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, and then again into Brahmacharis, Grihasthas, Vanaprasthas and Sannyasis. These are religious principles, and it is the duty of the head of the state to see that his citizens strictly follow them. He should not merely act officially. He should be like a father who is always a well-wisher of his sons. Such a father strictly observes whether his sons are performing their duties, and sometimes he also punishes them. Here we can see Prabhupada bringing up very important issues. Varnashama Dharma is still on our roadmap. Senior devotees and many other devotees reflect, meditate on Varnashama Dharma and how to build it. Normally it is associated with land. Of course, there is a direct correlation between Varnashama Dharma and land. It is not related to machinery, chemical industry, or production of machinery, technical devices, or spaceships, or weapons, nuclear weapons. It is not related to these. Varnashama Dharma is associated with natural lifestyle, with land, cows, brahmanas, old men and women need to be under protection. This is the basis of civilization, to ensure this kind of protection. Brahmanas are protected by kshatriyas, but not only by kshatriyas. If kshatriyas are not pious, then brahmanas are protected by the absolute truth, or by the scriptures. A brahmana would lose his power if he is not firmly established in the absolute truth. He will become weak and will surrender or will be governed by economic or political demands and trends. So in fact, he can break with the truth and stand back into the ignorance. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying we need true brahmanas who do not stand back into the ignorance. This is the only way to re-establish Varnashama Dharma. When there is a healthy head, when there is a clear mind who will clarify what are the religious laws, what is a science, what is a human society, who is a father and mother. According to this text, a king is a father, and a brahmana has a qualification to explain it in such a way that there is no doubt left. This is brahmana. There is no way to prove it in any other way, to offer some theoretic system for class divisions, for example. It is essential to hear this knowledge from a brahmana, because brahmana's qualities serve as a scientific evidence of what he says, his qualities. For example, scientists convince people to follow the path of technology because they are proud of it. They make achievements and they are proud of these achievements, and this false pride is convincing to believe that we will be worthy of something. We will be important if we have machinery, spaceships, devices, buttons, and we will feel important. This mindset comes from scientists, and this is the evidence of their science, no other proofs, because the rest is nonsense. People are impressed by the false ego and confidence of scientists and their pride. If you talk proudly about something, you'll be convincing. So false pride builds up the science, as you can see. And people start believing in some isms, which is nothing but manifestation of someone's false pride. Ahankara has an extremely powerful influence on people's minds, but Brahmana does not have Ahankara, materialistic Ahankara. He identifies himself with spirit, Aham Brahmasmi, and this is the strongest proof and evidence of a Brahmana's teachings. Any teaching given by a Brahmana is based on the distinction between spirit and matter. And this preaching should be intensified these days across the world. We should draw a closer attention to this. And then people will develop stronger interest in Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and will start reading books more again. Just contrary to the principles mentioned here, the presidents and chief executives in the age of Kali are simply tax collectors who do not care whether religious principles are observed. Indeed, the chief executives of the present day introduce all kinds of sinful activities, especially illicit sex, intoxication, animal killing and gambling. These four sinful activities are now very prominently manifested in India. Although 100 years ago, these four principles of sinful life were strictly prohibited in the families of India, they have now been introduced into every Indian family. Therefore, they cannot follow religious principles. In contrast to the principles of the kings of old, the modern state is concerned only with propaganda for levying taxes and is no longer responsible for the spiritual welfare of the citizens. The state is now callous to religious principles. Srimad-Bhagavatam predicts that in Kali Yuga, the government will be entrusted with dasyu dharma, which means the occupational duty of rogues and thieves. Dasyu dharma. Rogues and thieves. Modern heads of state are rogues and thieves who plunder the citizens instead of giving them protection. Rogues and thieves plunder without regard for law, but in this age of Kali, as stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam, the lawmakers themselves plunder the citizens. The next prediction to be fulfilled, which is already coming to pass, is that because of the sinful activities of the citizens and the government, rain will become increasingly scarce. Gradually, there will be complete drought and no production of food grains. People will be reduced to eating flesh and seeds, and many good spiritually inclined people will have to forsake their homes because they will be too harassed by drought, taxation, and famine. The Krishna consciousness movement is the only hope to save the world from such devastation. It is the most scientific and authorized movement for the actual welfare of the whole human society. Here Prabhupada again ends up the purport by saying that Krishna consciousness has a scientific basis, and the world should be presented with a scientific basis only. There shouldn't be any religiosity, any focus on religiosity, or focus on faith, or mere service to the Lord. These are all good, but we first need to justify how scientific this process of service to God is. It is a science-based process. For example, if you want us to serve within ISKCON, what benefits shall we get? So we need to describe the benefits acquired through devotional, selfless service. We need to disclose secrets, so to say, concealed secrets. And the secret starts with the fact that a soul, spiritual activities, have nothing to do with the fruits of one's activities. A soul or a human nature should not be disturbed by the fruits of activities. It is the nature of a body and mind to be agitated with the questions like, how much will I get paid, what house shall I live, what family, children, husband, wife shall I have, how many times will I get divorced, etc. Will I ever be happy in this material world? A huge variety of anxieties in our minds. And this is the material platform, and people consider those anxieties as a driving force. Kuntha, fear, anxieties, and an entire civilization is based on this basis, not on love or enthusiasm or noble motives and impulses, gratitude, compassion, but just on selfish motives. And an entire science is based on these motives. So let us demonstrate another kind of science, motives. We need to change motives. This is also another study area, because a human being is guided by motives, in-depth motives. So let us figure out the depth of our motives, what our true intentions are. And our question is, all right, we've developed economy, we build a powerful state. What comes next? Nobody knows. People are not aware of their in-depth motives, and this is the purpose of Krishna consciousness, to realize ourselves down to the core of our hearts. Once we realize ourselves good enough, we'll be able to build a society. The Lord Himself or the nature will do that. As it is prescribed by nature that we have working class, merchants, administrative class, and intellectual one, this is the ordinary course of nature. We just need to give an opportunity for them to make use of their true motives. service, selfless, loving, devotional service. This is the very motive that opens up our nature, and the society can be built by itself into a harmonious system because the Lord has already arranged it. So this natural order of life is already there. The nature comes from above. It's already predestined and given as ready-made. Similarly, knowledge is already available in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam, and happiness is already there as well. It is predestined and awaiting those who live according to the laws of religion. We only need to justify the scientific nature of these laws. Because the terms of pious, impious are considered not scientific enough in modern society. I don't know why. Somehow they've managed to make this difference. Whether the person is pious or vicious, these kind of things are put on the backseat or even further, and the degree of piety hasn't been determined in the fullest sense of this word. According to Prabhupada, the highest piety or holiness is a pure, devotional, loving, selfless service. This is the criteria. What a person does and what for. If one has certain self-interest, then he is not a righteous person, in fact. To the extent the person acts selflessly, he can be considered as pious or not. And there is a concept of a pure devotee. Pure devotees can save others from ignorance, because their purity shines a light of knowledge down to the bottom of one's heart. Whatever we can't see or hear can be comprehended through a guide, through spiritual teacher. Comprehend, see and feel. We can directly feel what religion is through our skin, firsthand. And it depends on the way we acquire the knowledge, the method for acquiring the knowledge. Since we've been hearing about God from atheists and agnostics throughout our life, what should we expect? It is totally useless, because all of them are motivated by a certain material self-interest. They are not pious, they lack saintly qualities. Their mode of material nature isn't high enough. There is only karma. They are motivated by self-interest only. So when they talk about God, they pursue some material objective. To consolidate their powers, probably, or others, and they make use of religion in order to strengthen the economy or join national forces or for political powers. Every time they are driven by some material benefits. Therefore, if we've been listening about God from this type of people, then we've been convinced that God is a servant of humankind. If He is there, let Him help us to develop science, technology, economics, private life. If He can help to add value to our economy and happiness, He is God. But the reality is quite the contrary. If God is there, then we are all His servants. We are supposed to serve Him. We have to follow His will. And this belief can be passed through a pure devotee only. This samskara, deep samskara that inspires us to act selflessly and sacrifice ourselves. These can be got through the greatest personality only, that kind of inspiration. Guru Parampara is available therefore, and kings of all days were part of the Guru Parampara. They would start their lives with spiritual austerities before getting married. As you can see the example of Āgnīdhra, who is the son of Priyavrata. He is shaping his destiny by following his father's steps. If it's time to get married, he remembers the forefathers' instructions. On austerity is needed before one finds a virtuous wife, or before having decent descendants to carry on your tradition. You need to perform austerities. A life journey starts with spiritual austerities, with restrictions and dharma principles, which is only then followed by discharging duties. And you end up your life by passing your activities to your descendants, who will do the same, who will not lower the bar, the level of purity and care and religion, and you pass away by the end of your life just the way your father did, like Priyavrata did. This is how all saintly kings lived their lives, by starting with spirituality, serving the Lord, and ending being fully absorbed in transcendental. An entire succession of kings strictly follow this. They referred to Raja Rishi, or saintly kings. They are referred to as exalted kings. And here the text states that apart from being experts in the science of leadership, They knew how to manage people, the world and nature as well. They were also distinguished by their parental attitude towards their dependents, to the entire praj. The term praj, as you know, has a broad meaning, which refers not to people only, but to all living entities, and they were taking care of the nature as a whole. Similarly, we also have certain public service divisions within our governments who make sure all species of life are preserved globally. They don't want trees to vanish, wildlife, even insects. If any insect is endangered, it's a warning sign, meaning some natural balance is disrupted. So there are public servants taking care of that. They're not quite qualified and experienced to do that, of course, not as efficient as those pious kings used to be, who could discern a soul even in an insect or a tree. They didn't treat trees merely as species of life suitable for their own needs. They would treat a tree as an individual living entity who is under the protection of the Lord himself. So they could recognize the equality of life. Of course, their attitude to life was quite different. The science was different, the politics and the economy were different, and we realize how far we have deviated from this. So far that it's hard to believe. Prabhupada in his purport says, for you it will be hard to believe in the upcoming future. When people go further down this road, by extracting the energy, they will deplete the earth. Rainfalls will be scanty, yajnas won't be performed, harvesting will be getting more and more challenging. Even today, without any manipulations with seed, it's hard to get a rich crop. Without chemical fertilizers, it's hard to get a decent product of good quantity. So this tendency is apparent. This is unfavorable, destructive trend which should be taken very seriously. Because poor quality food can destruct human consciousness. And the next stage, people will grow stupid. There are already many stupid people out there, millions, 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 who are not conscious of their life at all. They have neither time for that, inner forces, nor even a desire. All that is associated with food, activities, social structure, stressful life, everything we come into contact with today. So we've been facing quite an emergency situation globally. Since those days when Prabhupada left for the West, the world was already facing an immediate threat at that time, threat to well-being, threat from nuclear weapon, and nowadays the threat is not getting weaker, but on the contrary, is growing worse and more intense. So our task is quite challenging and serious, not just to save ourselves, but to disseminate those spiritual ideals that can save people. And that's why we read Srimad-Bhagavatam, to fill us up with enthusiasm and knowledge, for us to acquire Brahmana's qualities and be able to have a significant impact on global community, on governing bodies, on science. We don't rise in arms, we are armed with the knowledge. Lord Chaitanya at the age of Kali would use logic and arguments. This has been the weapon. The weapons at the age of Kali are logic and arguments. Therefore, we need to be very convincing while preaching by using logic and arguments and by basing on the scriptures like Srimad-Bhagavatam. In particular, Bhagavad Gita needs to be widely distributed for wider public, because this is the baseline knowledge. So we have internet at our disposal, meaning an entire world can be a field of our mission. We can speak about Bhagavad Gita in all languages, about soul, gunas, karma, about material body, family, varnashama dharma. We've got a wide variety of topics to discuss and hold seminars. So a little is left to do to welcome these opportunities, make use of technologies of Kali Yuga for everyone's benefit. Video cameras, audio recordings, filmmaking, various creative endeavors can be taken to disseminate the spiritual knowledge. And of course, the most important is to keep chanting holy names to make sure we don't lose our good motives, to keep our heart pure, our consciousness pure, our intelligence pure. So let us endeavor with our japa, if we want to preach efficiently, we make efforts to chant our japa attentively. Every morning we chant our 16 rounds with full attention, so that after japa we would lose the sense of place, where I am in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, or Galoka Brindavana, or in Russia, as if we can't distinguish it anymore. And being in this kind of meditative state, you appear on live broadcast and claim, I am not this body, and you get the whole audience shocked. They witness, this is a fact, there is something to do. So we've said a few words on today's text. We've read text 1, second chapter, 5th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the activities of Mahārāja Āgnīdhra. Please, if you have any questions on this topic, you're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Chandra Charan
Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu, thank you so much. Yes, there are questions, but before asking questions, probably senior devotees can say something to add, like Karabhajana Prabhu, Mahendra Prabhu. Karabhajana Prabhu. If there are any questions, we can proceed to questions. Maybe you have anything to add, Karabhajana Prabhu, if anything crossed your mind or came into your heart. Yes, I've got a few interesting insights related to the science on one hand, and ethics and morality on the other have diverged. As you have mentioned in the past, science and religion were kept close together, and genuine science was disclosed by the Lord himself. And at some point in the history, science and religion grew apart, and science became very immoral. Our business has become immoral, and our contemporary science is immoral without virtue. And as you've mentioned, I really appreciate it. Like, virtue and goodness are not appreciated by the science, as they are considered more related to emotions or sentiments, while it's mainly technical performance which is regarded as true science. And we all see the consequences in the form of technocracy, technical development. Also, you've mentioned about preaching, that we need to keep up Srila Prabhupada's mission and unmask the materialistic life views. And for that purpose, we need to present the knowledge in a very scientific way. And you've also confirmed saying that a true science can be perceived through Varnashama Dharma, through the science of soul. Varnashama Dharma is a scientific system. And no matter how hard we endeavor to set up a classless society, we did have such an experience. And I've got a very practical question. You've concluded by saying that we need to preach. We need to share the knowledge with other people. But quite a lot of people might think, how can I preach? I'm just a housewife or just an ordinary person. I do realize I need to preach, right? But I don't have the proper skills, talents, capacity for this category of people, who are the majority, of course. What does it mean for them to preach? How can they participate in Srila Prabhupada's mission or in the revolution of consciousness? As you've said, revolution without shots. We do have knowledge, and we can change, we can improve people's consciousness. And how these people, how can we take part in preaching? A very good question.
И, конечно же, вариантов возможности
Of
проповеди
course,
безграничное
there is an
количество.
unlimited variety of preaching
Прабхупада
methods,
описывает в 4 главе
just as Prabhupada describes in the
принцип
4th
яги.
chapter, the principle of yajnas.
Видов яги может быть бесконечное множество.
There is
Это
an
зависит от каждого
infinite
человека.
number of yajnas. It depends on the particular human's nature.
Принцип яги, жертвоприношение,
We know the
конечно,
meaning of the principle of yajna,
Господу,
sacrifice.
любая деятельность.
Everything should be done for Vishnu, for
И там
the
говорится,
Lord,
можно
any
жертвовать
activity.
знанием, можно жертвовать
And it says
чувствами, можно
one may
жертвовать
sacrifice
дыханием,
knowledge,
какие-то
senses,
элементы
breathing.
Кришна объясняет, а
So some
Прабхупада
basics
говорит,
are
и
explained by
самим
Krishna.
способом.
But Prabhupada says those examples are endless.
До
Check the
текста
4th chapter, you will see.
434 еще.
Up to text 434.
Принцип жертвоприношений, там говорит, брамачарья
The
делает
principle
так,
of sacrifice is
так,
described. For brahmachari it works this way, for others that way.
Sankirtana yagya. То есть на этом
Our
всё
yajna
как бы,
is
ну,
Sankirtana yajna.
нет
So
ограничений даже. Как
we are not
проповедовать?
constrained
Как умеешь.
by anything when
Любая
it comes to
причина
preaching.
годится.
Preach the way you can.
Понимала
Any
твои
nature can be suitable. The most important is for you to understand
И
the
другая
knowledge.
важная вещь. Нужно
And
подняться
another
над
important thing is to think outside of religiosity.
Те преданные, которые религиозны, как правило,
Those
не
devotees
очень
who are
сильны.
religious do not preach strongly as a rule.
Станьте учеными.
Become scientists.
Не в классическом смысле слова, а
Not in a
подход
classical
к жизни
sense,
другой.
but your approach to
Не
life should be
религиозный подход
different.
к жизни, а
It should
научный
not be
подход.
religious,
Тогда вы
but a
сможете
scientific approach to life.
разъяснять
Then you will be
или
able to
на
preach,
пальцах.
to clarify and send your message through
Нужно
easily.
сами понять эту вещь.
But you need to digest this
Вот
first.
прошло столько лет, да,
Like, for
потом
example,
десятки
so
лет
many
прошло,
years,
сегодня
decades went
потом
by
выясняется, что
before
преданные
we in
читают не
ISKCON
Прабхупаду,
found
а
out that
было такое.
devotees don't
Люди
read
больше
Prabhupada's
читают,
books. We had this
понимают
experience in the
Прабхупаду.
past. Now we read more, we understand.
Исправить эту ошибку.
We want
А
to
ведь вот эта
rectify this
тенденция к
mistake.
религиозности означает, что
Meanwhile,
люди
this
больше
propensity
читают,
to
не
religiosity means
верят в
people
Бога,
stop
и спокойно
reading.
живут, сидят
They
дома.
just have faith in God and live peacefully and
Это
eat
называется
prasadam.
религиозность.
This is called
Какие-то
religiosity.
элементы дхармы. И затем,
It
если эти
incorporates
элементы
some
дхармы
elements of dharma,
опускаются на
and
этот
then
уровень,
we sink
рождается
down to
принцип
that level
процветания,
and
как
expect
комфортной
economic
жизни.
prosperity. We want to make ourselves comfortable
Ну, вот
householders.
так экономику поправим, у нас будет
And when the economy is
счастье,
recuperated,
счастье будет
we are
богатее,
happy,
да.
we have
Мы в
karma,
какой-то
we
материальной
have good
ступени осваиваем
reputation,
вещи.
so we are
А
mastering the
Прабхупада нам
material
трансцендентное
lowest levels,
я не это
while
тело.
Prabhupada has given us the transcendental
Пытайтесь
level. I'm
понять,
not this
что такое
body.
движение сознания Кришны.
Try
Можно
to
его как бы
understand what
изменить.
Krishna consciousness movement is, because we can
Вольно-невольно
transform
можно
it into
просто
something
исказить.
different, intentionally or unintentionally. We can distort
Предназначено для
it.
того, чтобы мы распространяли
While the
основы
movement
Бхагавад-гиты
is
по всему
intended to disseminate the fundamentals of
Бхагавад-гита
Bhagavad Gita
трансцендентная
across the
книга.
world, while Bhagavad Gita is transcendental.
Пределами как бы этих 4 ступеней.
It goes beyond
За
those 4
пределами
levels.
освобождения.
It goes beyond
Это песня Бога.
liberation.
Вот то, что Прабхупада нам
It's
дал.
a God song given
Поэтому
by
вот это сначала
Prabhupada.
нужно понять,
Therefore, everyone
самому,
should
каждому из нас.
individually understand it.
Кто я? Просто религиозный верующий в Кришну?
Who I am?
Кто? Или я преданный?
Am I a religious person who has faith in Krishna, or I'm a Krishna servant who is servant to him within Śrīla Prabhupada's mission to the spiritual teaching? I have goals. I've declared war against Maya, took arms against Maya. Please get this message. This is the statement of our purpose.
Обуздать все свои чувства мы не
Because
сможем.
we will fail to take control of all our senses. It is as easy as declaring war while being in Maya, and Maya will examine us, attack. She will be war fighting with us. And here we need preaching. This is the only weapon available, logics and argument. This is important for our own interests, so that our Krishna consciousness could develop, not just religiosity, but Krishna consciousness.
Так, я сейчас отвечу на этот вопрос. Можно и больше сказать об этом.
So this is what I can comment so far. Maybe somebody can answer it in a more detailed way. Maybe Karabhajana Prabhu or Mahendra Prabhu, Karabhajana Prabhu. Probably you have something else to share, to suggest.
Вот Махендра Прабху.
Hare Krishna. Mahendra Prabhu is willing to say or to ask
Слышно,
something.
да?
Can you hear me now?
Вопрос в том, что вот я полностью поддерживаю.
My question is that I strongly agree with what you said so far, Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu, that we need to serve from the platform of transcendental knowledge. At the same time, we witness nowadays that we're getting increasingly involved in social initiatives, and as far as I understand, it diverts a lot. It pulls away from the ultimate objective. And how can we avoid this tendency, or how we can get out of that absorption into the social initiatives and always stay at the transcendental level. Thank you, very good question, Mahindra Prabhu. For social initiatives or for creative projects, we need a strong spiritual leader. Only strong spiritual leaders can cope with this. Others can help them, but only spiritually steady and fixed devotees can handle those projects. There is a spiritual leader and there is an administrative leader. And at our management classes in ISKCON, we were given the difference. A spiritual leader should sit at the top of a tree or a mountain at some height and see the ultimate goal, where the team is heading towards, which direction to lay a forest road. And somebody should be on the top of the tree or a hill to see the direction, mandatory. So this is the spiritual leader. And there are leaders who are underneath, on the ground. They are immediately in charge of the process. They lay this forest road. And the spiritual leader says, go straight, I indicate the direction. Here we have Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita as the basis, the words of spiritual teacher, Srila Prabhupada, everything is clear, justified, a clear vision. The leader on the ground organizes the work and they start working. But down the road they encounter a cliff. And then the leader on the ground is instructing to take a left. The leader above should know this is the wrong direction. They are forced to take this direction, forced by external circumstances. Since the cliff is out there, he is right to give that instruction. Listen to him. He is right, because you need to take left first, and then you need to go back and proceed the same path. So this curve is called a social project. It can be compared to a grihastha ashram. Here is a path to God, to Krishna. It is direct, but you run up against lust. Then you need to go through grihastha ashram to follow curved, crooked path. But a spiritual leader is required, so that this curved path does not turn into a deviation. If you are deprived of such kind of spiritual, well-established leaders, don't go into any social projects. But if there is spiritual leader who can dovetail your social project with Bhagavad Gita and yourself with Bhagavad Gita and get you back on track, then these projects are very good. They will be all pervasive and they will bring everyone to Bhagavad Gita. So therefore we say, read Prabhupada's books, study the science, because those social projects are nothing but a product of religiosity, artha. They might eventually turn into our material well-being, our financial support, our reputation and fame. They might turn into pure material success. This is what we've been discussing so far. So there is no way to avoid social projects or grihastha ashram and other obstacles along the way. So we will have to follow curved and crooked paths, absolutely, but we need to have solid knowledge. Therefore, devotees should be highly knowledgeable in spiritual science. If they want to preach in this world successfully, they will have to do it in a variety of ways. What's the use of banging your head against a cliff until you smash your head? No doubt, we need to be flexible, but for that we need a spiritual leader who sees the ultimate direction we need to follow. This is what I can comment on this question. If there is anything to add, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Everything is clear. Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu, if I may, I would like to ask another question. We know the story from Mahabharata when Mahārāja Yudhishthira met Krishna and asked him a wealth, beautiful wife, fame, etc. being slightly surprised, Krishna wondered, Yudhishthira, I thought you were my pure devotee. Why are you asking all these? And then Yudhishthira explained the motives behind. He wants to use all that to preach Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what Mahendra Prabhu said, those social projects and achar, prachar, ensures attractiveness of Krishna consciousness. And my question is, what is the qualification of a person who can attractively use and apply all material resources while preaching?
Ishvara Krishna Prabhu. Карабажна Прабhu.
Да.
Зависло или у нас зависло, просто я не могу понять.
Я тоже не могу ничего понять.
Karabhajana Prabhu,
Значит, зависло, раз у вас тут.
has the internet hung and stopped?
Вообще-то,
I don't understand.
Ishvara Krishna Prabhu говорил, что у Махараджа сейчас должна какая-то встреча.
Actually, Ishvara Krishna Prabhu mentioned that the Maharaj is supposed to have some meeting scheduled for this meeting, so probably Krishna has interfered. So while the connection is still disrupted, I will make an announcement. There were questions on YouTube. We have 38 visitors in Zoom, so we don't have any question in Zoom. All the questions in YouTube have been saved. And on the 12th of June at 4 p.m. Tashkent time, we will have Ishtagoshti meeting participated by Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu, and we will ask these questions. One moment, please. As far as I can see, Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu has joined us. Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu, do we have time? Because Ishvara Prabhu has mentioned that we don't have time. Yes, we have some time. If there are any questions serious enough, we have time. So we give the floor to you. Have you heard the question? Yes, I have heard the question. And then the internet connection was disrupted. So, Karabhajana Prabhu's question, what is the qualification of a devotee involved in social projects? Here we can mention the most essential aspects and secondary ones. The most essential aspect is, of course, devotional to the spiritual teacher, to that spiritual leader who can see the ultimate goal and direct his disciples. So the connection, strong connection must be there, but it shouldn't be sentimental. A disciple should understand or correctly interpret the spiritual teacher's intentions. Therefore, the second point is also very important, is strong Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, robust knowledge of Bhagavad Gita's fundamentals. So this qualification will be sufficient for you to perform any social projects without fear of falling into Maya. So devotion to your spiritual teacher, to his instructions, and Sambandha Gyan. Because without Sambandha Gyan, one will not understand what spiritual teacher is talking about. Sambandha Gyan. And this would also define our practice. And by our practice, our sadhana, we will be able to judge and appraise our Sambandha Gyan and devotion to Guru. If our practice grows weaker and gets full of some social projects, that means we are falling into Maya. We are simply falling into Maya. But once there's a strong devotion to Guru and Sambandha, we will not go to Maya. But we need good sadhana, good japa, we need to read Srila Prabhupada's books, attend programs regularly. And this is the guide to understand how a devotee is qualified. So to keep it simple, if you are in Krishna consciousness, do whatever you want. If you are in Krishna consciousness, you are free to do whatever you want. But if you are not, be careful. Because social projects deprived of Krishna consciousness might make an impression that I am involved in something of practical, feasible value, and what is the use of Hare Krishna temple? This is when a contradiction in the mind leaks in. This is how Maya leaks in. Such person will start neglecting intentionally and sink into the mode of passion. He will deliberately neglect temple programs, relations with the devotees. He will think, I've attained success with the social programs, and what is valuable in here? Nothing is here but Maya, while the reality is quite the opposite. So we need to be extremely cautious here. If social projects are disrespectful to ISKCON, they are wholly bad. These are not spiritual programs at all. On the contrary, they're supposed to improve ISKCON's reputation, to maintain ISKCON and Prabhupada, to clarify the value of Parampara, the value of Bhagavad Gita and Vaishnavas. This is the purpose of those programs, but not to destroy ISKCON's reputation. This is Maya. Abhiram Prabhu also has questions. Maybe I should ask my question later on, otherwise I will spark anger among other devotees who are willing to ask. In fact, we've already collected a lot of questions on YouTube. In any case, we will not be able to take all questions. Let us pick up the best ones, the most essential. All right.
Так, давайте.
Mataji Ganharvika is willing to ask a question. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. Please come closer and speak louder. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. Thank you so much for your lecture and all online lectures. They're so supportive, especially in these challenging times, because we cannot go, we cannot attend temple and see the devotees. My question is that once I have heard in your lecture that parents should primarily take care of their own spiritual practice and allow their children to have independence to choose. I guess the religiosity that you've been talking about deters and frightens away both relatives and children, friends. And so, my question is, do I have a right to tell my children about Bhagavad Gita, or might this interfere or contradict their ideas, their plans and visions? So may I interfere, so to speak? Interfere into what? Interfere into what? Into their life, into their outlook about life. No, 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 no. We don't need to interfere in anywhere. We are not asked to do that. This is not our approach. Has Prabhupada interfered in America's life? He came to share something valuable. No interference. Share something valuable. Don't share religion. Give some values. Isn't Bhagavad Gita full of knowledge, attractive ideas? Everyone might find something attractive out there. But to do that, you need to understand Bhagavad Gita very well, from all angles. To tell you the truth, we still have a very little knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. We've been introduced to Bhagavad Gita quite nicely, but our knowledge needs to be more in-depth and stronger if we want to preach Bhagavad Gita to children, to neighbors, friends, to the world. We need to have a thorough knowledge of this message, because this is the greatest science, as Prabhupada says, the greatest science. Thank you. We have a question from YouTube. I would like to read it out. Nitai Mangala Prabhu is asking, do we as devotees need to become scientists in order to disprove scientists? Devotees hesitate to dispute with scientists or handle arguments of scientists who present them in an academic way. We don't necessarily need to become secular scientists. If some devotees have already taken the position of scientists, they can speak in scientific terms, apply their logic, approach, etc., to move the science forward. It's quite a challenging task, titanic work to move the conventional science forward. Official science, it's a demanding task. To make it through to the academic circles, to earn degrees, to earn good reputation requires lots of efforts. Therefore, these efforts shouldn't be taken by all devotees, just those who have already gained some reputation or who know how to do that. Meanwhile, we have a spiritual science, and our objective is not just to disprove the materialistic science, to unmask it, but to provide people with a new science, a superior science. This is our way, our path. Automatically, if you give something superior, that materialistic science will become subordinate. It will come automatically, no matter how sophisticated it is, how full of regalia and achievements it is, it will become inferior if we provide a superior science. This is our path that we should follow. So devotees need to know the science of Bhagavad Gita, which is superior. We're not talking about religion. Religion is one. But as for science, there is a variety of sciences, lots of branches of science, so to say. So science should be one as well. The standard of science needs to be elevated or improved. Thank you so much. Mataji Chaitanya Rasa is asking, how can we scientifically prove that the soul does exist? Open chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, where you will find out a few justifications, facts, that Krishna presents. Because the discourse about soul starts with the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the first argument is analytical. You make an analysis, Sankhya. This analysis can be very in-depth or very simple depending on whom you're preaching to. For example, I've been doing this for many years. I've been explaining this scheme to other people and to myself hundreds of times. Sankhya. Soul differs from matter. Senses are superior to matter, mind is superior to senses, intelligence is superior to mind, and soul is even more superior. So identify all these attributes and present, explain. According to Bhagavad Gita, it's a fact that a human body changes over time while the personality remains the same. And this is indicative of a soul presence. Clarify this example in full detail, because people don't figure it out at once. It would take time to provide more insight, to show how the body changes, why and what exactly changes therein, because they will not follow you first time, 100%, but once they pick it up, they will be shocked. Their consciousness will blow up. Right, there is something unchangeable within me. Here it is, a soul, we caught it, analyzed. Next aspect is that a soul permeates through my body. This is another way to identify a soul. This also needs to be presented scientifically, how it permeates. Parts and parcel are saturated with the consciousness. I am everywhere. It can be presented in full detail as an academic paper. This is a fact. They will present counter-arguments referring to neurons, neurochannels, other details taken from biology, but you say no. These should be permeated, saturated with a single consciousness, a spirit, all that is you. As long as some part of the body is connected to the body, we say it's me, but if it's disconnected, we say some finger. We call it a dead flesh and throw it away, because it's not saturated with consciousness. Consciousness incorporates the whole body, so this is another symptom of a soul, all-pervading capacity. So first comes permanence, second, permeability, and the third feature, or there are even more, I need to check, a soul can be identified in the cause of activity. While performing selfless activity, you can feel your soul. So we have at least 3 dimensions to further develop scientifically. It's science that can't be defeated. So you can feel your soul experimentally, through spiritual activity. You can analyze and thus understand the soul, or with the help of meditation. If you master meditation, you can approach your soul and feel it. So scientific arguments are available, facts and experience. Thank you so much. Another question asked by devotees. You've mentioned that we need to present strong arguments. What arguments can be referred to as strong? Are they backed by faith or something else? The strongest argument is your conviction, your spiritual vision. For example, once I was trying to explain to one man the difference between living and dead, matter and spirit. I've presented certain arguments, there was a discourse, a long dispute. Once in a while we would resume to discuss the same topic. Once, we were walking through the forest. And since I've been meditating on this topic, the difference between matter and spirit, all of a sudden I took notice of a regular herb. A herb, green, beautiful leaves, delicate. I can appreciate those things being an artist, that kind of ornament, art of nature. Quite habitual, something we come across regularly. And next to that herb is the same herb, but withered up, completely ugly, grey, with broken twigs, no ornament, no elegancy, nothing. So, 2 representatives of the same species of life, plants, in different conditions. I'm telling that man, look carefully. Look at this and this. What's the difference? He says, this one is dry, this one is not. Yes, here there's a soul within, and here there is not, and it was convincing to him. After all the arguments I made, we were both reflecting on that, but when I took notice of that myself, when I perceived, startled, and passed this experience over to him, it became an evidence once I observed it myself. So when you manage to find new arguments, when you meditate, and you will be able to find new evidences for yourself, you will be very convincing. Your reasoning will be very, very powerful. With your own eyes, you will witness what's going on around. This is preaching. This is science. Science can be eye-opening. Thank you so much. Balgovinda Prabhu has a question to ask. Balgovinda Prabhu, you can speak louder. I've come across with a situation in my life where people want to... there is an echo effect. Would you mind come closer? I would like to ask. I'm in a situation where people are totally frustrated and disappointed to the degree that they start seeking some alternative. And according to Prabhupada, the alternative is Krishna consciousness. The 4 principles that we follow should be presented and offered to them as an alternative. As of now, all of them violate our principles and they keep asking what the alternative is. When I suggest them giving up illicit sex, vodka, beer, meat, they become deadlocked since they are not yet aware of spiritual bliss and joy as an alternative. How can I explain to them and convince, like Prabhupada draw an analogy between a room stuffed with LSD when drug addicts asked what Krishna consciousness was. Srila Prabhupada giving an example of a room full of drugs. That experience is kind of a Krishna consciousness experience. So the question is how this kind of people can make the right choice. An alternative refers to a lifestyle, an alternative lifestyle. Without mentioning four principles or restrictions, offer them an alternative lifestyle. Tell them their lifestyles brought you to frustration. The cause behind it is improper lifestyle, not regulated diet, rest, work, leisure, mind. Mind is the reservoir of all problems. Those people will understand what you're talking about. You can try to keep away from this, and add this and this into your life routine. Try getting early, reading books, chant this mantra. This is the alternative. Let's make a deal. If you don't feel anything within 1 week, we will meet and discuss the reasons why you didn't. But I'm sure in a few days you will feel the difference, because the lifestyle will change, and so will your consciousness, your sense of happiness. Your whole life will change. Try it. Here is an alternative lifestyle, purer, higher, better. Prabhupada preaches a lifestyle, not just restrictions, but a lifestyle. Thank you so much. Karabhajana Prabhu, would you mind asking your question, please? Maybe I'd better ask this question some other time, because it's a serious, in-depth question that will take more time, and I don't want to keep Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu. So our next online meeting is scheduled for the 12th. I will ask this question after lunchtime. All right. Thank you everyone for participation. Thank you, dear Maharaj. Do we know how many participants we had today? We had 38 in Zoom, and we've also got visits on VK and YouTube. Don't know how many. We will check and send you through the statistics. Thank you so much. Also, please, devotees, you can turn your cameras on and have a look at one another's happy faces, and Maharaj will be able to see all of you.
Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.